Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer to zoom in on the situation with Venezuela and the Trump administration's latest military actions. We have retired Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, former Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander in the U.S. Army, and now geopolitical strategist. Darin, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Now, with the focus on Venezuela, President Trump saying land operations could be next. What is the possibility of that?
Hi, Tiffany. Always good to see you, and thanks for having me on. No, I would say that the possibilities of actual land operations in a large scale are probably slim, and that is somewhat pending on the results of where Maduro actually ends up. We're getting some initial reporting that he has already left or could leave pretty soon. That remains to be confirmed and seen. But I think this would look more like if there's anything approved by Congress to go to war against Venezuela, it would be more of an air-based operation initially to take out some critical targets that we know are being used against the United States specifically and the Western Hemisphere in general. So we'll see, but I don't think we're looking at some sort of large, like beach landing or massive ground invasion at all.
Now, there's growing scrutiny on the strikes so far, with the White House today confirming follow-up strikes on the alleged drug boat in September. Now, some are concerned about the U.S. getting involved in, say, another war. Is that a legitimate concern, or is this an appropriate response given the devastation caused by opioids in the U.S.?
Well, it's a legitimate concern as far as the picture in people's minds of the U.S. sending some sort of large invasion fleet and becoming an occupying force of some type in Venezuela. That I don't think are going to find very many people behind. However, the reality is we've been at war for a long time because of the narco-terrorists, the drug state, and Venezuela operating as really a communist ideological platform in the shape of a country that's specifically targeted at the United States, but also spreading influence across South America, attempting to control Panama. And if you want to look at who's behind that, you'll have to look to China, Iran, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others. All of these people will cooperate when they know that the ultimate target is still the United States.
Now, we saw last week the White House formally designated Venezuelan regime leader Nicolas Maduro and his allies as members of a foreign terrorist organization. In your view, is what the administration has been doing so far in line with that move?
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges is designating something as a terrorist organization and then conducting some sort of all-out war against that organization based on that designation is really skirting with the boundaries of what the Constitution intended as it was written and still says today. The War Powers Act does allow a certain time frame for the president to act without congressional authority, but in the end needs to get congressional authority to go beyond that. In this case, something significant against Venezuela, there needs to be action within Congress to make sure that occurs. I'm not doubting or questioning what Venezuela is and who Maduro is as a useful puppet, frankly, to the people pushing communist ideologies across the Western Hemisphere and the different parts. So I think the debate's worth having, but ultimately Venezuela is a nation that needs to be looked at very hard, and Maduro needs to go.
On the note of the communist ideology, some reports, like one from Politico, are suggesting that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is hoping that toppling Maduro will weaken the regime in Rubio's ancestral homeland, or Cuba. What are your thoughts on that?
It's certainly possible, and the reason why is the typical discussion about dominoes falling. And one of those reasons why is because we've seen the change in the election and what happened in Argentina. We've also seen what happened in Chile by getting people voted into office who are less aligned or not at all aligned with communist or socialist ideologies and the success they've had. So that means those other nations that are still around that are adopting that are less likely to be as influenced. And Cuba is certainly on that list. At some point, the people there will become impatient too. The difference there is, of course, you're not going to change Cuba through an election because they just don't have them.
I want to go back to your earlier point about China, because what's been China's role here, and what would a Venezuela without Maduro mean for the Chinese regime?
Well, China, first of all, would look at this as, maybe a necessary opportunity to figure out who's post Maduro. Because if we didn't properly influence Venezuela to to select again a good and positive leader, and which is Venezuela's choice to make, then, well, China's going to look at this as either lost opportunity or lost footing in South America with their chief nation they've been influencing through. Or they're going to look at it as they're going to have to start over with somebody else and try to maintain the same thing. And that's the risk of toppling Maduro, is do you just get another guy who's just like him afterwards?
Well, Darin Gaub, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tiffany.